Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Hello, and welcome. My name is Lester, this is Monday Motorsport, and we are live. It's Motorsport Radio, thank you very much for tuning in. So, over the next hour or so, we've got lots of reaction about everything that happened, minus the cricket and the whatever else it was happening at the weekend. We're just focusing on the brilliant motorsport, namely everything that happened at Silverstone in Formula 1. Were you there? Let us know. How was your experience? And how was the food? That's what we want to know, more importantly. But yeah, we'll be going through everything that happened, mostly, including all the controversies. Yes, we'll get to that later. And also Formula E, the last round of the 2018/19 season happened at the weekend. 2 races in New York. If you didn't see it, we will tell you all about it. There will be some spoilers on tonight's show. We have our Motorsport Radio website editor with us, Connor Jackson. Hello, Connor.
Hello, Lester. How are you this evening?
Yes, I think we're not done this show in a while, so feels weird to be here doing this.
It's new, isn't it? Back for another season, hopefully.
Kind of. I've not really cut my hair since, and I kind of look like a tramp. But anyway, just for those who are listening, that's what I look like, a tramp. And also joining us on the show, it is Nigel Chew.
Yeah, brilliant to be on the show again. Third one, I haven't been on for a while now, but great to be on the show again.
Exactly. So, Nigel, what have you been up to, motorsport related?
Yeah, just about the F1 and fun really for me this weekend. Brilliant action, brilliant racing all round in Silverstone and New York. It'll be more positive tonight, I think.
Fantastic. After, I think, maybe his previous guest appearance on the show, or maybe his last but one, we didn't exactly rip into you for being too negative, but we did definitely suggest a downward spiral of positivity that was going on, i.e. the trouble with F1 and all that sort of stuff. None of that tonight, because I'm told by experts on the internet that it was one of the greatest races of the season, but how could you tell? Anyway, we'll get onto that shortly. Connor Jackson is here. Give us a comment and a share if you are tuned in wherever we are. I don't know if we're streaming on single seaters, but if we are, hello and welcome. We'll probably share it out. We'll let Nigel do all the social media sort of stuff. Because, yes, we're going to focus now on all the biggest controversies. Mostly in Formula 1. So, yes, Silverstone Grand Prix. And, yes, I suppose I'll start off by just asking, quite simply and plainly, Connor Jackson, was it the best race of the season so far?
Probably is the answer I'll give to that one. In terms of, I don't know, there have been some interesting moments this season, and I think last round in Austria was definitely a highlight for a lot of people. But if there is any sort of advert Silverstone will give, it's certainly the biggest advert they could give. Okay,
it sounds like that's a very mixed reaction to the question.
Well, it's more a case I don't want to give a direct answer to say it's the best race we've had going for a while, but. I don't know. We had a lot of elements. It's great to see Leclerc and Verstappen back into their element, obviously, because we've sort of seen them in the last, Verstappen especially in the last 12 months or so, sort of really pull back from his usual antics on track. And I think since Austria, since that aggressive move on Leclerc, the two of them have they've taken their gloves off. And they're really prepared to see perhaps a new rivalry forming between the two of them. And to be honest, I think that's exactly what the sport needs. It's the young rivalry between two drivers, because the one we've had over the last couple of seasons is starting to fade a bit. Let's say.
Oh, you mean the old Hamilton and whoever Hamilton's teammate is? But yeah,
no, Vettel.
Well, Vettel's another one as well, but Hamilton's teammate this season has been subpar, let's say. Bottas finally got back to performance this time, and I was very impressed with his qualifying pace at Silverstone. And he was actually quite unlucky in the race, so perhaps I shouldn't give him too much discredit for that. But this is an odd comeback from Bottas, who's already quite far down in points compared to Lewis. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of that.
I think we're sometimes a bit too keen, Nigel, to try and frame everything as being a good or bad comeback, whether it's the best race of the season or the worst race ever. But having said that, was it the best race all season, or was it the worst race ever?
It was second best race for me. Austria was still the best race, I think, because there were no safety cars yet. Verstappen managed to come through the field after a really poor start. But then Silverstone, the first 20 laps, first half of the race, had so much wheel-to-wheel action. And Silverstone once again proved that the track layout really allows the drivers to take different lines and they can race hard. Some people didn't like when they changed the layout in 2010 to the new layout when they got rid of the bridge corner, but I'm definitely a fan of it. I think it's really helped the racing.
Fair enough. I did find it a little bit surprising, I'll be honest, that many people were saying that it was the best race of the season, just mostly because it wasn't actually that spectacular. I mean, it was good. But I have to admit that I've been very busy over the past couple of Grand Prix and I've not actually seen every single race this season, so I'm not going to be one of those people to compare. That would be just ludicrous and very clickbaity if I was a headline.
I expect nothing less of you, Lester.
Well, great. Okay. Well, I suppose maybe we can throw open the floor to people's comments who potentially want to get involved and have their say. Classic race? No way. No. Best race of the season? Yeah. Who cares, to be honest? It was just a race and it was good. But were you there, more importantly? Have you got back? Have you fully recovered? Have you, like a lot of people, started to suffer the post-Grand Prix blues? Because it was, I forgot the actual attendance figures now. It was something like
351,000 for the weekend.
It was 140,000 on the day.
Yes. Yeah. Tip of my tongue.
140,000.
Which I believe makes it like the biggest sporting event in the UK.
In terms of attendance, yes.
Yes, indeed. Still the best. The British Grand Prix. And, of course, you already know, because you're already an expert in that, you'll know that Silverstone and its contract with FOM, Formula One, has been extended for another bunch of years. And apparently, Connor, they've saved a lot of money. They've driven down the price, having had that admission from Bernie a year or so ago, in that they actually fleeced a lot of circuits and they overcharged. So, yeah.
Well, if that is true, then Liberty are going to be losing an awful lot of money in the next couple of years. Because
that's the expectation, yeah.
Formula One events were never cheap to host, and that was always along with Monza, I believe, had the cheapest deal on the calendar. So if Silverstone are correct, and they've apparently got the cost down to whatever figure that means, then I'm pretty sure lots of other circuits would like to play the same game with Liberty. And I'm sure when the contracts are next renewed, you'll find hosting costs for Grand Prix going way down. Unless apparently you're Sochi, that still manages to pay 3 times the amount Silverstone does, and they're fine with it. But other than that, so it's great to see Silverstone back for another 5 years, as you say, 2024. Hopefully we'll have more contract extensions after that, and obviously nothing is ever for certain forever, but certainly the deal we've got now, I certainly wouldn't complain, considering how close certain other circuits are on the calendar to being chopped off, most notably the next round we're going to in Germany.
Ooh, yes, always a always seems to be, Nigel, that the German Grand Prix at its various locations over the years, and sometimes no locations, as Connor rightly points out, that it is in danger once again, it seems, of being, I suppose, in for the chop.
Yeah, it's a strange one, Germany, because they had Nico Rosberg in 2016, became world champion. They got Vettel now, yet the crowd numbers are still nowhere near the days of Michael Schumacher when he was at Ferrari. And Germany is a historic track, Hockenheim. So, yeah, it's a weird one as to why it's not the same as Silverstone and why it's not attracting the people going to the event. And of course this year they weren't actually meant to have a race because it usually happens on even numbered years, but this year they do have a race. But it'll be interesting to see in 2021 onwards will the German Grand Prix still be on the calendar.
Fair enough, yeah. I'm not particularly bothered that much about it, I have to say. So yeah, not bothered if it comes or goes, to be honest, if it stays. But there again, I'm not German, sadly. They do have a nice culture over there. Anyway, to the racing itself, and because there was actually racing, and I'm told it was the best race of the season. However, I'm just thinking as to what particularly of that best racing to focus on. We've already touched upon qualifying. It's always a bit... It's a bit like cricket now, qualifying, isn't it? Oh, well, in fact, it's probably a bit worse than cricket, I should probably say.
Qualifying could be the best part of the weekend. Sometimes.
Well,
that says a lot,
yeah.
I think. The fact that, it's deciding whether it's going to be Bottas or Hamilton. Okay, anyway, on to the actual racing then. And it was Lewis Hamilton's sixth victory at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, making him now the most successful driver to win the British Grand Prix, or definitely the most successful British driver to win the British Grand Prix at any track that it's been on, not just Silverstone, but Silverstone included as well. And believe it or not, Connor, there are still some people who think that Hamilton is not one of the all-time greats.
Well, how dare they? But Hamilton has taken a lot of his recent success in Mercedes, as we know, and I'm certainly not going to get into a conversation tonight about how much it's down to the car and how much it's down to him. But as he slowly gets ever closer to Michael Schumacher's all-time win record, which could still happen this season.
What's he on now, Hamilton?
I forget thank you. I forget the actual number, but it is only 12 away from Schumacher, so it's very, very close, let's say. Okay. 80, I believe, is what Nigel said, and yeah, that's correct. So, yeah, it is a case of Hamilton will forever go down as this driver at very much an elite level, like Schumacher was, like Senna and Fangio were. But obviously, where you want to rank him amongst those guys is obviously perfectly up to you, and I would understand people ranking him higher or lower depending. I still know people today that still don't rank Schumacher as the greatest ever, because he did have a certain class of finesse about him.
Bloody Germans!
Yes, that as well. But no, with Hamilton himself, obviously sixth victory at Silverstone. It breaks the record that we've had from Nigel Mansell and Jim Clark, who won the race 5 times, I believe. So it's great to see more British success at the circuit, and it's also great revenge for last year, because as many people remember, he was punted off in the first corner, and as a result, it's interesting to see how the championship developed after that, because it was very much Vettel took a charge after Silverstone Grand Prix to get to an extent back into it before his German mistake that ultimately killed his season. Silverstone was a last hurrah for him. And similar this year, we could argue the championship is playing out the same way, and that it looks like this might have been a last hurrah for Valtteri.
Oh, yeah.
Before we might start talking about writing him off. And I know this is a very...
You've got it in for old Bottas, haven't you?
This is a very contentious thing to say at the halfway point of the season, I know.
He's just got the pole position at Silverstone, literally gave Lewis Hamilton a black eye, almost spoiled his party, and you are writing him off already. Shame on you.
I'm not sure what you mean about giving Hamilton a black eye. I'm sure their party was very civilised after the event. But no, I mean, you were slagging Hamilton off and the race off just a minute ago, saying it wasn't the greatest race ever. So I don't know.
Whoa. Saying it's not the greatest race ever is very different to slapping Bottas down and saying and writing him off. Like halfway point in the season? Very different things.
Bottas was good this race. That I won't deny. You look at qualifying, you look at how he treated himself during practice. Practice was proof that the pace was there. This wasn't a complete fluke one-off lap. But there is a sort of a cynicism in how that safety car was called with Antonio Giovinazzi crashing. It was an and I hate to get into Spygate scandal because I know you love a conspiracy theory, Connor. I don't think it was that level of petty either, because there's nothing for him.
Connor Jackson thinks the race was rigged. You heard it here first.
No, but it was a very easy run-off by Giovinazzi, and that could easily have been fixed with a virtual safety car. The fact they went to a full safety car, I think, is a little easy way out.
But even if they went for a virtual safety car, Hamilton still would have came out with a lead, and he would have had an even bigger gap because the safety car bunched him up, and you lose the same amount of time by pitting under the virtual safety car and the safety car. So, yeah, how can you argue that?
Okay, in fair point, the virtual safety car wouldn't have helped Bottas necessarily. I just thought the safety car was a bit of a harsh penalty for what was someone stuck 20 metres away in the gravel.
Well, it could have been the fact that they had to I think they had to deploy a tractor, and nowadays in F1, if that was in fact the case, obviously because of #Bianchi, whenever a tractor is on a live circuit or recovering a vehicle, it is just normal to put out a full safety car.
True, but I could argue what's the difference in that case between a safety car and a virtual safety car. I can understand double wave yellows. I get that point about the tractor, but if you're bringing out a virtual safety car where they all have to adhere to time limits, they're going the same speed as you would into safety car. It's effectively the same condition. They're just not bunched up on the track. Surely.
No, they're not, because the marshals then have a much bigger gap with a safety car around them, whereas a virtual safety car are all spread out. So then you can't get the tractor to go out there. It's much easier if they're all bunched up. Plus, they do go slower under a safety car because, well, they're behind the safety car. Whereas a virtual safety car, they're still, because it's a timed thing. They can push into the corners, try and keep the temperatures up, etc. So, yeah.
Okay. Fair. With the safety car, as we know, obviously it did affect Bianchi. Not Bianchi. It did affect Bottas.
Wow.
Shush. It did affect Bottas's race.
He's always close to it.
I know. Because
internet outrage at Jackson. Wow.
But the other point about the safety car was that Bottas was doubly disadvantaged because he had to make another pit stop anyway because he'd only changed one set of tyres. And we talk about how Silverstone was an exciting race. I'll tell you what I think made it an exciting race: the fact it was a two-stop strategy. I know Hamilton managed to make it work on one. Well done to him. But ultimately, the plan for everyone before the safety car interrupted things was to make it a two-stop race, and that difference in strategy, especially between the Red Bulls and Ferraris, who were battling it out on track very intently during that point, was key to how the race was played out, because it played out in different stages. You had the Ferraris having the advantage in the early section before their tyres went off, and before the first pit stop, and Red Bull were the quickest on track. See Verstappen and his battling with Leclerc, and then after that period, the Ferraris came back, and we saw Leclerc head on towards the podium, and that double pit stop. And with the double pit stop, obviously, we saw the Leclerc and Verstappen incident in the pit lane. Vettel himself was helped out because he made like Hamilton, he didn't make a pit stop early on, so he went to the one-stop strategy, and that change in strategy would have helped him longer in the race, but obviously he's had that incident, which we'll talk about later. So honestly, I think the biggest factor to how this was an exciting race was the fact we were forced to have drivers with 2 pit stops.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm quite critical of Pirelli usually, but I think they actually did a decent job at Silverstone, because there wasn't too much tyre wear, but there was enough to force them into a 2-stop, or some for a 1-stop. So we had a strategy variable there. Not everyone was on the same strategy, and if there wasn't a safety car, it would have been a really good race. Probably better. Maybe it would have been as good as Austria, but yeah, it definitely would have been better.
As you say, we wouldn't have known. The interesting thing would have been, without the safety cars, ifs and buts, but how...
Connor Jackson, where have you gone? He's vanished. His audio's disappeared.
Yeah, I think you were saying without the safety car, it would have been... Oh, go on, Connor. Go on.
Yeah, we're good. We're back. Lovely. Apologies about that, guys. But without the safety car, Bottas would have been in a much more interesting position, because we saw the first stint. We saw how Hamilton was closing him down. We saw the aggressive back and forth between the two, because that is one thing we saw at the weekend that I was impressed by, was we had an overtake and a re-overtake within a single lap. And I know this sounds like the most pettiest thing ever, but tell me the last time you remember 2 drivers battling it out back and forth at the front of the grid.
Austria.
But Austria was a straight overtake, wasn't it?
No, because before that, the lap before, they were side by side.
Yeah, but they didn't overtake, and that's the point.
We're going to have to disagree on this one.
Okay. My point being, we don't see that in F1 anymore, which is drivers swapping positions lap on lap. And even if it wasn't massive, it was nice to see that back, because when you see overtakes now, it's all a single pass done. Once the pass is done, that's it. The day is done. He's not coming back. Especially if it's pulled out of DRS zone, that's it. You just accept the race is lost from that point, which is why the old adage of the race is over after the first lap comes into it, because once someone breaks DRS zone in the first 3 laps, boom, that's it. They're not going to be caught. The exception to that always seems to be Hamilton, which is great. But it's great to see Hamilton and Bottas actually fighting it out on track, and they swap positions twice before the first pit stop, and Mercedes let them do that as well, which I thought was also great. It's great for Ferrari and Red Bull doing it, but to have 2 teammates going at it is also proof that Mercedes has such faith in their drivers.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think it just shows that the circuit offers great racing, because you got the run down the Wellington Straight, then through Luffield, past the old pit straight, and then down towards the Hangar Straight as well. It's just a shame the TV director showed a shot of the crowd.
Don't get me started on that.
Well, I have to say that was pretty poor, to say the least.
Talking as a TV director of various motorsports, I feel almost qualified to say yes, that was a shockingly bad bit of timing. Not that I might have done any better, but it was just, show the crowd, join the replays by all means, but during the lead battle and the overtake for the lead of the race, do not cut away halfway through the overtake. Imbecile.
Yeah, it's not the first time, unfortunately, that the TV director's done that. He did that in Austria as well, when Verstappen was overtaking Leclerc. But you are right, Lester. It's good to show the fans it's not right in the middle of an overtake. I mean, imagine, say, a football match, the team's through on goal, and then they decide to show the fans while he's about to shoot or something. It would just be ridiculous. It's the same here. Don't show the fans when two cars for the leader side by side.
Yeah. Do you have any particular thoughts on that, Connor?
It was poor directing. I will admit. As you say, once the overtake had been done, perhaps down into Maggots and Beckett's, when obviously you can't overtake much through there, and it is all just setting it up for Stowe Corner, then yeah, sure, you go back and you have a quick look at the crowd who might have been cheering, perhaps, or clapping to each other or something, I don't know. But that's when you do it. What you don't do is you do it on the outside left field when it looks like Hamilton's setting up for another move straight back into Copse Corner, and yeah, that was a wrong decision. But hey, I think it's probably a bit harsh to criticise the TV director for one bad move.
Well, according to Nigel, he's been doing it for quite a while. Not Nigel, but the I'm presuming it's the same director guy, because he's made the same mistake, apparently.
Yeah, in Austria, I don't want to keep going back to Austria, but Carlos Sainz started way back into 17th, and then he got in, I think, to 7th or 8th, and none of his overtakes were shown at all.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a separate issue, which is the one of not focusing on midfield battles. In fairness to Silverstone, we didn't need to focus on the midfield battles. All the action we needed was up front, as it were. But yeah, in certain races this season, when it's all a bit stagnant at the front, I think the TV director does need to man up a bit and be like, well, let's go have a look at Sainz or Grosjean or whoever working his way through the field or whatever battle, because usually they're pretty good. You talk about Sainz, that's a great example. Williams as well in France. They had a great little tussle apparently in the middle of the race. Both Robert and George commented on how they were sort of swapping positions quite a lot on the run down the straight, but none of those were shown because it was two back of the grid Williams, and who would care about Williams, he says. Well, obviously not. That's the point. Loads of people are fans of Williams, and surely something like that would be encouraged, but no, you've got to see the leaders after all.
I do know what you mean. Yeah, it is. You've only got one chance as a TV director, just to play devil's advocate and see things from his or her point of view. You've only got one chance to get it right first time, and if you don't make it the right call, if you don't get it right, the world slates you, and that's what we're doing. I don't make the rules. But I mean,
I'm sure it's a tough job, but it's just meant to be the best one, so surely.
Exactly.
And why don't they use a split screen as well? Because in other motorsports, you can show like one battle in a bigger screen and then show another in there.
Oh, yes, like IndyCar.
Yes, IndyCar was on. Apparently, none of us saw the IndyCar race at the weekend, or races. Don't know.
Because the start and the finish, but yes,
we were all too busy. I saw a punch up between Takuma Sato and someone else in practice. Yeah, that descended into, there was some sort of overtake. Anyway, that's all I saw of IndyCar at the weekend, as we were too wrapped up in Formula E, Formula 1, and someone said something about the cricket and the... What else was there? Oh, Wimbledon as well. Whatever. But anyway, Connor. Lewis Hamilton.
Yes.
Has he, do you think, got back from his... do you think maybe he's got his revenge on things that happened last year?
Yes, certainly. I last year was very unlucky, especially with his crash, and obviously it was never his fault. But to romp away in this time and win in such a decisive manner, I think is definitely one he'll take to the heart, as it were. They'll be that slight thing with the safety car, as we said, but to be honest, looking back on this 2-3 years time, will we care about that? No, not at all. I was watching the Sky Sports coverage just before the race, and they did a small feature on Johnny Herbert's only win at Silverstone. And in that, they talked about the crash between Damon Hill and Schumacher that basically gifted him the win. But I think about it. But I think about that race. Obviously, I wasn't around, but I think about that season years in the future. And that race, that crash wasn't significant for the championship ultimately. And you much more remember these small drivers doing well in weird circumstances than you do how they got to those weird circumstances. Think Panis in Monaco, 96. We don't think about how he got there. It's just we just remember the fact he got there.
Was it because it was raining and everybody crashed?
Basically, yeah.
See, I remember.
Because it's Monaco. But you I don't know, maybe I've defeated my own point here, but you do see my point about
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's
Hamilton will forget last year, and it will all be about moving forward from this point.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think anyone, unless you want to add to that, Nigel. I
forgot what your question was really, but Hamilton did a great job this year. There's no doubt about it, and the pressure on him going into every British Grand Prix each year must be immense, because I'm sure he has extra media commitment, the fans from the home crowd, pressure from that, and he handles it perfectly, really, and he always gets the job done like he does most of the time.
You say he handles everything perfectly. I have spotted over the past couple of years, not to be too critical and negative about the greatest ever British Formula One driver ever, but maybe you've not spotted it, but I might have noticed a couple of small criticisms from fans, mostly not based in the UK, about Hamilton's reactions to things, his comments about other things, his Instagrammings of things. But he doesn't just like most of us, Nigel, we don't always get it right on social media, do we?
Yeah. Well, Hamilton was asked a question actually at the weekend about his Britishness by a journalist, and I think he handled it quite well. And he was also asked about Max Verstappen and Christian Horner saying Verstappen was better than him, and I think he handled the questions quite well.
What did he say? I missed it.
So the Verstappen thing, it was Christian Horner saying Verstappen has been better than Hamilton. Yeah. Hamilton just complimented Verstappen. He didn't give the journalists too much of what they wanted. Yes, and then on Saturday he was asked about his Britishness or something like that by a journalist from The Guardian, and I can't remember what his answer was, but he handled it fine.
Like a champion, potentially. Connor?
I suppose that's a small point in itself, Nigel, which is we remember the outrage. Well, I'm going to call it that. We remember the outrage of Hamilton's being questioned on his Britishness, but we don't remember what the actual quote was. We just remember the outrage. We don't.
Who cares? He should resign. Damn outrage.
Yeah, and that's the point, isn't it?
We all love being outraged. We don't even care what it's about. If we see someone else being outraged, then we're like, oh well, I should also take a principled stand on this. What do I think about misgendering a child in a short Instagram clip? Do I care? No. But am I going to virtue signal just for the hell of it because it's I've got nothing else to do in my life? Yes, I will do that, and that's what everybody did.
No comment on that, Lester. But
that is what everyone did, though.
Yeah, as you say, Hamilton's used to handling the media by this point, and to be honest, I don't think anything could really faze him too bad. I do think his lifestyle has certainly moved on since what it was a couple of years back, but it's a lot of his criticisms nowadays are to do with his lifestyle, because there isn't too much to do with his on-track action anymore. We haven't really seen him in a sort of tight battle that we need to anymore, and that's perhaps a slight disadvantage in that it will always be a case of we'll see Hamilton praised for his achievements, but in terms of on-track action, you look at how Verstappen was battling with Leclerc at the weekend. When was the last time we really saw Hamilton have that interaction on track? Because I can't think of too much sort of wheel-to-wheel action, which is why credited the Bottas fight earlier in the race, because when it comes to sort of regular on-track action between drivers, Hamilton will just overtake someone and that's it. And he's certainly in a league of his own, because I've never really seen a driver in the last 2-3 years, at least since Rosberg, take him on in wheels action, and that's intriguing, but it's also very notable.
In some ways, Nigel. Go on.
No, I was just going to ask Connor, are you questioning Hamilton's racecraft? Because I think his racecraft is very good, hence why he hasn't been in so many incidents or hasn't spun or made any mistakes under big pressure.
Oh yeah, and as you say, when it comes to his speed outright, he certainly has that. I only question his racecraft in the extent that when he doesn't have the fastest car on the field, how does he react when battling other drivers? Because if you want to look back to Austria, Nigel, when he finished 5th, that was clearly a very disadvantaged day for him. He was not in the best car, he was struggling. And I know there wasn't a massive opportunity for him to fight toe-to-toe with Leclerc on that day, or even Verstappen, or I'm trying to think, it was around Vettel, I think it was around 3rd, wasn't he? But we didn't see him battle with those guys. He was just running around completing his laps until the finish line. And sure, when he's in the fastest car, it's easy to praise his achievements. I'm certainly not denying that. But his actual toe-to-toe combat, I'll be intrigued to see how he really handles in, say, a year or two time, if or when his car gets to a point where it's not the quickest thing out there, because he's clearly going to be a little rusty, isn't he?
Well, I can't really agree with that. I think I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. But
Okay.
Bahrain, he was against Vettel spun. Last year and 2017, the Mercedes was by far not the dominant car. I mean, Bottas only finished, I think, 5th in the championship last year, and Hamilton still managed to win quite a lot of races under pressure. Monza last year stands out for me. At the Ferrari, the Mercedes was nothing to separate them yet. Hamilton managed to beat Vettel, overtake Raikkonen with 10 laps to go. And there's many other Grand Prix as well where Hamilton, I mean, when was the last mistake that he made in wheel-to-wheel combat? And he has been in wheel-to-wheel combat.
Yes, and I'll take you on that point. He hasn't made a mistake in a long time, but you say overtake Raikkonen, overtake Vettel, and that's my point. He's overtaken them. Vettel's screwed up quite a lot, and I think we can start counting on 2 hands sooner or later the times he's made errors that are unforced. But and it is a case of just straight overtaking. There's none of this side by side for half a lap. When was the last time you saw Hamilton spend half a lap?
It's not the 90s anymore.
It's not. It's about lap after lap. It's not just some circuits you can't battle for half a lap. Look at Bahrain. He had to build up to attack Vettel. He had a few goals. One of them, Vettel defended quite well, and that but Hamilton did manage to go around the outside, and he did overtake him. Same with Monza last year when he overtook Raikkonen. He got past, but then Raikkonen got him back. But then later in the race, he did manage to get the job. So I think he has been in wheel-to-wheel combat, and it's not just been a straight overtake, in my opinion.
Okay.
I do think I was thinking earlier that, given that you can literally see the progress of maturity and racecraft and skill of Hamilton over the past few years, the better driver Hamilton has become over the past few years, the more or less entertaining, or some might say more boring a driver and unspectacular driver he's become. But in some ways, to be the best driver, you've got to be boring. You don't make any mistakes. You don't put a wheel wrong. You just get on with your thing, do it as quickly as possible. An engineer's dream would be to just not make any mistakes, be like a robot. And in many ways, now Hamilton is like that, whereas a couple of years ago, you would always think maybe, can he hold his own? Is he going to lose his head a little bit here? Is he going to sort of fly off the handle? Is he going to start accusing everybody of racism? And there's none of that anymore, I don't think.
True, but then again, I suppose I could come back with that and say, does that mean Prost is a better driver than Senna because Prost got on with the job? Okay, and Prost got on with the job and finished it while Senna was very much emotional about the whole thing.
And he outscored Senna every season that he was his teammate.
No, but it's just the thing with me with Hamilton is Ferrari and Mercedes, the last in 2017 and 2018, the titles should have gone down to the wire, but Hamilton didn't crack, and he finished off the championship with 3 races to spare in Mexico, and that's to me what's so impressive. If it was another driver in that car, say Bottas for instance, Mercedes might not even have won the championship, never mind with 3 races to go.
I'll disagree with you on that one. I'll say I think if Rosberg had stayed around, they still would have won the championship.
So if Rosberg Bottas.
Well, Rosberg did get the psychological edge, which was the deciding factor, said Nico, in beating Hamilton, because Hamilton's, I think, only weakness then was that he wasn't mentally as strong. He couldn't handle, let's say, the pressure of I think he can now. He's changed a lot and learnt a lot, and he's not, by all means, the perfect driver. Maybe nobody ever is, but again, judging from that, when was it, 2016 side-by-side performance, Hamilton, Rosberg versus Hamilton and Bottas today, definitely I do think that Hamilton is he's ironed out those psychological flaws that he probably possessed, and Nico definitely learned from Michael Schumacher, because he said so in some, I forget where it was, some documentary or something like that. Nico learned a couple of little psychological things just to put in Lewis's mindset, and just over a course of a season you keep just doing these little tiny things and it all adds up, it all builds up, and it got to him at some point in the 2016 season on many points, and sometimes that's all it can take. That's my thought anyway.
Well, I'm not going to talk about something unless you want me to talk about what I think about.
But that's why you're here, Nige.
Oh, I do think there's no lucky championship, but Rosberg was a bit lucky. I don't really agree with his psychological comments, because Hamilton had quite a lot of reliability issues, not just Malaysia, but his engine blew up that year, and I think Rosberg just took advantage of that. I think Rosberg, I don't think he had DNF that year. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I'm not saying Rosberg was bad. I do think Rosberg's better than Bottas, and Rosberg would be a better challenge for Hamilton. But I do think Rosberg was more fortunate that year, rather than a psychological advantage.
Well, considering that everything was in presumably equal in the team, and by many accounts it really was, i.e. machinery, the only difference between them is, yes, maybe a little bit of luck here and there, but you have to consider, in every instance, when there's a title battle, especially among teammates, the psychological edge, because to beat anybody, your first goal in Formula One is to beat your teammate. That's literally your number one goal in Formula One, to beat your teammate and get a contract for next year, in many people's cases.
Yeah, that's very right. And Rosberg did a really good job to put himself in a position to take advantage of Hamilton's misfortune. Say, compared to Bottas now, say Hamilton retired the next race, Bottas wouldn't be able to take advantage of that in the championship. He's, I don't know how many points he's behind now, 39, something like that. So, it just shows how good Rosberg was compared to Bottas.
Yeah, I know what you mean. by the way, Lester, I am very impressed with your captions underneath.
Whoa, what are you talking about? Don't know what you mean. We've got an expert person. Sorry, carry on.
Anyway, it's fine. But no, back to the Rosberg thing. He was that year was a change for Lewis, I do believe, and it's why we now think of Lewis as sort of impervious to any sort of mental issue, because it was the 1 year he was sort of beaten straight up mentally, and he did learn a lot. I know a lot of people focus on that Malaysia incident, but I really don't think that was the major cause. The championship was being lost before that point. That wasn't the only reason. I was about to say what some of the others have commented below, with aero being a massive issue in modern Formula One. That I do believe is more of a major issue than Hamilton's teammate with or any of the rivals with Ferrari or Red Bull, which is the fact that Hamilton has got on top of these new cars, he's got on top of this new Pirelli tyre, and ultimately a lot of it does suit him and his style. And so if it's always being built with him in mind, with his driving style in mind, then there's no reason to suggest he can't be knocked off, because the aero is always going to be built around him for the Mercedes team. And I'm sure they are going to be building it fairly, but look at the short contracts Bottas gets. It's hard to build a car for him a year in the future because they don't know if he signed a year in the future. But with Hamilton, he's got this long-term contract. Schumacher had the same thing with Ferrari. He was constantly having the car built around him because
he was the best.
Exactly, because he was the best benchmark to put it against, and Barrichello would often get his contract renewed. It's the whole reason the 2002 Austria scandal came about, because Barrichello needed a new contract, basically. But yeah, I don't see it changing anytime soon. But I don't know. It'll be a case of when Hamilton finally steps down, as opposed to when someone beats him.
Nigel, obviously we are going to get on to talk about Max and Sebastian's incident where he was rammed up the chuff, but just skipping one step ahead of that for now, and just touching on what Connor was talking about there. Will Sebastian now, because there's a lot of talk, probably just rumour, nothing official obviously, but there's been a lot of talk with a lot of people on the internet about Sebastian maybe not being the team's number one driver anymore. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a really big talking point, because since Canada, really, when Vettel lost the win, he hasn't shown anywhere. He hasn't shown that he is the four-time champion that he is. He has not made it into the top five in the last three races in a car that should definitely be inside the top five, starting inside the top five, qualifying. And I think with Vettel, he has made so many mistakes, and with Leclerc shining as a young new star, I think Leclerc is starting to show him up, because Leclerc should not really be beating him as commandingly as he has been this season. So I think Vettel is under serious pressure now, and he was named the number one driver coming into the season. I highly doubt that is the case anymore. But yeah, it's a tough one with Vettel, because he still has the pace, that's for sure, but something's not right. I don't know if it's fatigue, or is it just the pressure from Ferrari, the pressure from having to battle Hamilton, the pressure of having to battle these young drivers, including Verstappen and Leclerc. But he's just never been the same, really, since Germany last year, I'd say.
Are we expecting too much of multiple champions like Sebastian Vettel, though, Connor? I mean, he seems to be doing better than what Alonso did at the same point in his Ferrari career.
Is he?
He seems to be. I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say no.
I'm not sure where to take your question.
Well, what I'm saying is just because Vettel has had a couple of very public misfires, and he's not performed as well as he should have done. He himself will admit that. But does that mean that he's now going to be honestly a number 2 driver? And are we just reading too much into it? Are we all being a little bit clickbaity about a couple of duff performances by the multiple fantastic German world champion?
Yes. You are. Yes, you are, Lester. Saying that, you say things have not been the same since Germany, Nigel. I'll tell you what, they haven't been the same since. They haven't been the same since he got married. And I know that's the most cynical. That's the most cynical approach I can take to it. But it's always been a joke in the F1 paddock that you lose some speed once you get married. And honestly, I think the responsibility is just getting too much to him between his family life and obviously his racing life. It's, as you say, he's been cracking this season. He hasn't finished on the podium since Canada. He hasn't really performed against Leclerc, who's been on the podium the last 4 races. And if we're just taking the last 4 races, as you say, he's definitely been a number 2, but do the team consider him like that? Probably not. They will probably stay loyal to him until the end of the season, or at least until Leclerc gets a significant points gap ahead, where it's blatantly obvious they can't ignore it. Last year, near the end of the season, I think it was.
Well, think about.
So you're saying that's why he's not doing well, because he got married. That's why.
I did hear him say that. Yeah, don't try and backpedal now, Connor.
Okay, I'm going to stick by this.
So you think Vettel's getting too much sex to be a world champion now? That's a real thing.
He's not getting enough.
Or that, yes. Does kind of happen when you get married. Not that I'd know. Anyway. Right. A couple of comments have flooded in. Apologies that I've not read your comment just yet. Been busy, see. Been doing a show. But anyway, thank you very much to Mr. James Williams, tuned in, and to Adam Matheson and a couple of other people on some other accounts as well. But yes, just reacting to what we've been talking about already, guys. James says, Seb has a long-term contract. It's hard to build a list of replacement front wings for him. Crying, laughing emoji. Thank you, James. And he also says, I don't think number 2, regarding Vettel, I think Ferrari are less likely to put their entire faith in his strategy. The quick calls to swap him and Charles around will probably take more thought, though. But yeah, just counting on one hand, though, Nigel. How many? Just remind me again, because I've missed a couple of races. I didn't see Austria and I didn't see France. How many races has Charles won?
0.
Oh, right. So he's now being considered the Ferrari number 1 driver, is he? What is wrong with you people? God! Ugh, internet people.
Well,
there's more to that.
You can win a championship without winning a race.
Connor Jackson thinks Leclerc will win a championship without winning a race. You heard it here first.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Oh, wow, Connor.
You can't just look at Grand Prix wins.
No, you can't just look at wins and points and things that win things. Yeah. You've got to look at how you feel about a race. Was it the best race ever? I feel it was the best race ever. Maybe it was the worst race ever. I feel like Sebastian Vettel is going to be demoted. I feel like he's going to get his legs chopped off because he performed badly in that race. You can't just go off what you feel. It has to go off facts and stats. And Vettel has a contract. He has many, 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 many more wins than Leclerc will probably ever have, as good as he is. But right now, it's way too early. This is the official announcement, by the way, right here, because I'm saying it. Vettel will remain number 1 driver at Ferrari. Anybody suggesting otherwise is a stupid head. Carry on.
Yeah, whatever. I don't think there is a number 1 policy now anyway, to be honest.
There is.
So,
definitely is.
No, there isn't. Well,
definitely is.
Proof? What on-track evidence?
To be honest, this is exactly the same argument, Lester, as Horner suggesting Verstappen was better than Hamilton because he has better racecraft, or whatever it was nowadays, even though Verstappen has not won any titles. And people pointed that out. They were like, "Oh well, you know, Verstappen."
It's also the same. Yeah, it's also the same sort of argument that makes people say online that, well, for example, yes, I'm going back a few years here, but if Senna hadn't have died, he definitely would have won 10 more world championships. Just because you think it doesn't mean it is actually factually true in any way, shape, or form.
Well, in that case, Vettel did factually win in Canada then.
And Leclerc won in Bahrain.
Well, anyway, your thoughts continue to flood in, and well, why not make it entertaining and actually tell us, if you're tuned in listening live, what you really genuinely think. Try and base it on facts. That's what I'd say.
You can't
look at the championship standings, Leicester.
Yes, Leclerc is ahead of Vettel by how many points now?
-7.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that, Nigel. Right, so, but talking about the actual incident on track, yes, Vettel messed up, and I'm sure he, more than anybody else, would have thought that he shouldn't have done that because he probably is a better driver than slamming into anybody. To his credit, he didn't necessarily come out as and be the petulant Vettel that we have seen this year, and instantly start blaming Max. I don't think he did at all, to be honest. He
actually went up after the. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. He actually went up after the race and shook Verstappen's hand in the cockpit. So
almost as if to say, "Sorry, mate." Yeah,
almost as if to say he's realised the mistake he's done. And it might be it might be a turning point for Sebastian. The sort of, I've made a mistake and I'm going to acknowledge it because just being petulant about it's not going to get me anywhere type thing. We've had the Canadian outburst. That's it. That was the crescendo.
Yeah, I mean, if Lewis Hamilton is looking a lot more statesmanlike and a lot more is behaving more adult than you are, then I think you've got a problem, because Lewis Hamilton traditionally, over the past few years, has been the biggest child on track when things are not going his way.
Oh, God. That's, okay, you're going to... Everyone's just turned off now.
Let's say Hamilton's biggest... Oh, Jesus Christ.
What did I say? I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't...
we just lost everyone.
You just called him a child.
I didn't exactly say that. I was making a comparison, but... you were saying something...
Lewis Hamilton is compared to a child, Lester Forbes.
That's not an official caption, I'm afraid. Nobody said that, so it doesn't count, I'm afraid. So, Nigel, yeah, the incident for you, pretty clear-cut, and Vettel, he ended up with a, 10-second time penalty. Didn't do anything because he was towards the back anyway, but yada, yada, yada. His fault, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Max wasn't in a fantastic position anyway, despite being apparently better than Lewis Hamilton now, according to one person.
He was in second, wasn't he?
I forget now, but yeah.
They were fighting over third, what technically would have been a second place if Valtteri hadn't pulled out a gap, because they also had to make another pit stop.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I've derailed something. Sorry, but as you said, the incident that was happening in the latter half of the race just before the second pit stops, and yeah, it ruined Vettel's race. He finished down in 16th. So yeah, sorry, go on, Nigel.
Yeah, the move itself is, you can't not say it was Vettel's fault. It looked a bit desperate to me. It's like he tried to outfox Verstappen to go for a gap on the inside that clearly wasn't there. It wasn't even alongside, and yeah, it was just a clumsy move, is the way I'd describe it.
I suppose it was a bit like, to compare it to, road users in Norfolk. When you try and undertake someone on a roundabout, and that someone happens to be a massive 50-foot lorry, and you almost end up doing yourself a right old mischief, which it happened to be what did happen to Vettel in the end, but yeah, that's all I can compare it to. Pretty clear cut, and yeah, I'm not really bothered, to be honest. It happened, it was a thing. everyone's moved on. Yeah, get over it.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the official word, unless Connor wants to hit back.
No, not at all. It was Vettel's fault entirely. He was man enough to take responsibility, which is nice, but other than that, I can't really say too much. Ultimately, there were more interesting stories further down the grid, as I'm sure we'll get to in a minute.
So, go on. Sorry, Nigel.
I was going to say, Verstappen and Leclerc, they got very close as well. They actually did make contact. Do you think, Connor, that was fair racing, hard racing, or do you think should have been penalised?
No, that's fair. I've seen more aggressive stances than that in Formula 3, and none of them care for the slightest. So yeah, no, I'm perfectly happy to see Leclerc and Verstappen battle as they were, even the barging incident at Club Corner, where Verstappen went off, supposedly gained advantage off the track. You're not going to do that on your circuit, and that's not going to happen all the time. And yeah, the two did make contact beforehand, and yeah, rubbing is racing in that sense. To be honest, the biggest surprise I thought of the crash was the fact none of them actually picked up any damage. Usually with that you'd see them trail off into the pits, but other than Vettel getting a new nose cone, that was about it. There was nothing that was really damaging for either of them, so I thought that was interesting. A good note on the strength of the cars, maybe. And also maybe that's a good note for overtaking if the cars are that strong even when collided with. Maybe that's a good incentive moving forward, that you can be a bit aggressive and not just smash the car to pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
And Verstappen was catching Pierre Gasly as well as a teammate, which says a lot about Gasly getting caught by a damaged car.
Gasly had a fantastic weekend, honestly, and we'll get to that in a minute. But honestly, this weekend almost saved Gasly's career, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Last of all.
No, it was just interesting about everyone's career being in absolute peril, just on the basis of like either having a good or bad result. Whether Vettel's had it now, he's retiring next race. He's in the bin. He's being replaced or whatever. Or as kind of suggests, he's basically with Gasly anyway. His career hanging by a thread, narrowly saved because he put in an alright performance. But question I want to get to next, by the way, Connor Jackson. The championship's now over, surely.
Yes.
How?
Bottas has proven in the last couple of races he doesn't have the outright speed.
Even though he got pole position on Saturday.
Yes.
Any competition of outright speed?
Yes, because of race pace. Sorry, I mean, okay, fine. I'll rephrase that to he doesn't.
Sorry, that was me being a dick. So go on. I know what you mean.
I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, but no, Bottas clearly doesn't have the race pace to Hamilton, and unless he planned, I don't know, attempt to do a Rosberg and get pole position every week and just be the biggest dick imaginable and try and hold Hamilton up for as long as he dares.
Why not work for Rosberg?
It only worked once for Rosberg. Didn't work the other two times. So yeah, I can't see Bottas pulling this back unless Hamilton has a string of engine failures or something ridiculous. So yeah, are you
suggesting something, Connor? Some conspiracy theories there?
No, not at all.
So when Hamilton has a string of MGU and engine failures in the next couple of races, just saying.
It's because I sabotaged them, yes.
Exactly.
I specifically flew out to Germany and Hungary and wherever we're going next, specifically just to literally throw a spanner in the engine.
Hiding in plain sight, that's what it is. Nigel, championship's over now, though.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was over a few races ago, to be honest. All the talk of Bottas on social media, Bottas 2.0, Bottas has had his porridge, or all that talk. It was nonsense, really, because Bottas cannot beat Lewis Hamilton over a season unless Hamilton injures himself or something. And it's just a shame that Ferrari are not in the championship fight. after looking so good in testing, and Red Bull too, because it looks like the Red Bull and Verstappen are really coming along now, and I think they can genuinely challenge Mercedes for the rest of the year. But it's just a shame that Verstappen is too far behind, or everyone else is too far behind Hamilton. But yeah, the championship does look over unless something very, very drastic happens.
Everyone seems to be having a bit of a meltdown publicly at the moment. It's whether it's Bottas, even though he got pole position on Saturday, whether it's Sebastian Vettel, as some people suggest, or whether it's William's story of Rich Energy, for example, just to name one person and single him out, because that's what a natural course of conversation brings us to. HAAS, Rich Energy. If you are not fully up to speed, don't worry, because there's been lots of developments and I've not been keeping track of them either. But basically, there's seems to be a bit of uproar within Rich Energy and some legal disputes about the use of the logo, which seems to belong now officially to White Bikes or whatever it's called. But anyway, basically, I wanted to ask, Connor, has anybody actually seen an actual can in an actual shop, a real physical shop of Rich Energy? Not something that you buy online or that you presented at a promotional thing. Where are they getting the money from? Apparently nowhere. What's going on?
Well, yes, it reminds me. It reminds me nicely of the British GT days, where we get BHD ice cream, and I've never seen BHD ice cream on sale outside of a race event. But people sell a lot of things online now, Lester. You don't need to just.
I've never bought a can of drink online as such a casual purchase.
Well, you can buy it for events. If you're having a party, for example, just buy a massive case of 24 or whatever and take it from there. I had a quick check the prices the other day. The prices actually weren't that reasonable, especially compared to Red Bull. So
neither is the company director.
But yeah, with the HAAS Rich Energy story, as you say, it's been developing a lot this week, the last 7 days, since their Twitter announced they'd stopped sponsoring HAAS, to the shock of even the people inside the company.
And HAAS.
And HAAS, who were very adamant that no, they have got a contract, it's fine. HAAS then announced they were sort of still talking with investors and were happy to talk with them, of which the CEO came back and said, oh, no, those investors are just breakaway people trying to steal the company from me. And then they continued to race the car throughout the weekend, and then HAAS, the team, had a terrible result in the race when the two drivers hit each other on the opening lap, and they both retired by the 8th lap. And so the CEO further took concern with them. In a public letter, the CEO, Mr. William, apologies, I forget his first name.
William's story, I think it is, or
William's story. Thank you. Said that the team hadn't been performing or living up to the expectations that they'd promised. To an extent, they are correct. After all, HAAS is the second lowest team in the championship, just ahead of Williams.
And HAAS hit back at the weekend by barging into each other
by doing exactly what Story said they would do, which is an interesting way to go about it. Grosjean actually outperformed Magnussen during qualifying, which also was a bit of a shock considering how good Magnussen's been recently. So I don't know, maybe it's affecting the internal of the team. Anyway, but yes, in Rich Energy's defense, because lots of people are attacking them, Williams have been the only team worse than them, I should say. But HAAS haven't been performing as well as they were promised. It's certainly not as good as last year, because remember last year there was...
Well, they were on that Netflix, what's it, weren't they?
They were allowed to, and they were cheating, they were using under budget.
I think William's story's got to our Connor, Nigel. I think that's what it is.
Sorry, say again, Lester.
Oh, you broke up there. Are you back now, Connor? Connor is back. Excellent, albeit with a bit of latency.
I think so, yes.
Excellent. That's what drinking too much rich energy will do for you. But
yes, my computer is clearly on the cooldown after a rich energy overdrive. Anyway,
carry on your point as I say hello to Chase Owen, who's briefly tuned in before realising I've just mentioned his name and then unsubscribes. Hello, Chase.
Anyway, but yeah, Haas is not performing as they should, and Rich are right to call that out into question. However, to call them out so publicly into question is certainly not the best way to go about it, and I would almost suspect that by next round we probably won't see Rich Energy logos on the car, because I can't see that relationship lasting another 2 weeks. There'll be
whatever makes you say that, Connor.
Well, it leading up to something. You suggested about the point earlier about the white bikes, the whole logo problem, which is obviously causing them massive financial issues. And as a result, that's really hit into their bottom line. I doubt they've got the money or investment anymore to push forward with their F1 sponsorship. And it will be sad, I think, because both parties need each other. I don't know, maybe that's inevitably what will save them, is the fact Haas are so desperate they will put up with this interesting sponsor. But I'll be interested to know what it's actually done to their sales. That is the bottom line of all of this, after all, is if Rich Energy sales have... No, Rich Energy. If Rich Energy...
Oh, yeah, forget they sell things, don't they?
Yeah. Haha. They also sell merchandise, actually. You can actually buy Rich Energy t-shirts.
No, you're right.
Exactly. Then it will be interesting to see, because if their sales have gone up, that, can I say, is the boldest, weirdest marketing strategy I've ever seen. But there you go.
I'd just like to preface everything that and every comment that I've made about William's story and Rich Energy and the ongoing Haas debacle by saying that this, if it's not as ludicrous as it really seems, then it's obviously somebody dealing with some personal issues, and so I don't want to take the piss too much. Just enough, though, because it is playing out on a public space, and well, if we're not going to do it, others definitely will. But yeah, with that in mind, anyway, we're not going to. I'm definitely not going to slag William's story off too much. I know others have been really, really critical of him, but it's clear he's definitely going through a lot of stuff at the moment. But Nigel. Team, as Connor suggested, to me anyway, you kids are too young for to even know what I'm about to say, but it seems like the end of when arrows was a thing, and
early 2000.
Yeah, I think it was 2002, and then there was the and we could all see it coming for like race after, and this exact scenario where sponsor or their only big sponsor or something, it's got that same feel to it. Everybody is feeling a bit doom and gloom about a team that they like to support, the underdog, if you like, a team that can show potential, did show potential, had a couple of successes here and there, but ultimately they know it's not going to last for too much longer. How long are they actually going to last? Till the end of the season?
Oh yeah, I think Haas will last to the end of the season. Maybe probably next season as well. They've not had... It's a weird one, Haas, because the qualified performance has been really strong, actually, but it's just the race pace has been bad. And when Williams' story did say they're leaving on their Twitter account because of poor performance, the best thing is that in Austria, Kevin Magnussen qualified 5th. So if that's a bad performance...
Yeah, but he finished the race below Williams, and that's the point.
No, but it shows that they still have pace, doesn't it?
Well, you can qualify on pole position, but if you DNF every race, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, I know that, but it shows that the car's got potential, and it's that it's not a complete disaster like Williams has been. So the way it's been handled is quite good. Go on, Tom.
No, I was going to say, there have been only 3 occasions this season when Williams haven't been the last 2 in the race. 4 as of last round, actually, because of Britain, because of Vettel. But there's only been 3 occasions before this, and on 2 of those occasions, it was Kevin Magnussen. If the story was correct to an extent, to say that HAAS haven't beaten Williams in certain events, because that hasn't happened. But obviously, it is a bit conflationary to say they're even rivaling Williams. But yeah, there is very much a case of they do need to step up their performance. They do need to start even fighting with Toro Rosso. They haven't scored a point since Monaco. They had a double points victory the race before that in Spain, but it's been dire since then. There hasn't really been an opportunity for HAAS to show themselves. And I know they've got limited budget, but Racing Point and Force India always did well on limited budget, so you can keep that going at least for a short while.
One of the richest men in the world, if not Racing Point, limited budget.
Force India then, if not Racing Point. Okay. But I think Racing Point still go on a relatively small budget compared to the likes of Renault. But
they're not going to run out of money anytime soon, put it that way. But yes, I take your point anyway. And a couple of other points have been made as well. Hello, by the way, to Blake Gibbons, tuned in briefly, I think, and to Isaac Smith, checking out what we're talking about, if we're slagging his favourite driver off or whatever, or maybe just saying what we're talking about. James Williams been back on. Hello. Once again, James, who says Rich Energy have by July the 18th to destroy or deliver to white bikes everything with the logo on. And it was quite telling that the team did remove the logo, but not the name from the car at the weekend. Did you notice that? I did. But anyway. That was just a point. He also says as well, both HAAS drivers, Nige, aren't good enough for the team. Both of them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I thought last year Grosjean definitely should not have been in F1. Magnussen's slightly better, but they're both very inconsistent, I think. And I think they do definitely they should have changed the lineup this year. And they definitely need to do it next year, because both drivers clearly they're not in my top 10 drivers on the grid. I'll put it that way.
Ooh. Go on.
In that case, Nigel, can I ask, what would you suggest changing them to? Do you think they should go the Ferrari route?
Oh, don't you dare say Alonso.
No. But do you think they should go the Ferrari route and bring in one of their young guns, or are you suggesting bringing across a big name like Hülkenberg or Perez?
Yeah, it depends a lot on what happens at the top, usually, because usually what happens is when a Ferrari or Red Bull Mercedes driver one day move the rest of the field changes around as well. I think they should bring in a young driver from Formula 2, Formula 3 maybe.
I know someone.
But they should also... Don't say Carl.
We know many people, Lester.
Well, one particular driver, I don't know if he still is being supported by... what was Rich Energy, but he was at the start of the season anyway, and that is someone who's already doing his racing internationally, someone that Connor Jackson as being a pretty quick young guy, especially in British Formula 3, Toby Sowery.
Is he sponsored by Rich Energy?
He was.
Oh wow, I did not know that. Wow. That's interesting. For those who need reference,
I don't know if he still is, but he did have support by them. I don't know if he was just an ambassador. I don't know, but he was at the cars launch at the start of the year and yada yada. That's just a young driver who I'd put the name out of there.
He's racing in Indy Lights, I believe. I'll go search up that. You carry on talking.
Yeah, I think they also need some experience. So if Hülkenberg's going to leave Renault, they should aim to get him. Perez, I've heard, could leave Racing Point. So Hulkenberg or Perez would be the most realistic or best options.
But I think you're missing one little tiny small point, though, Nigel, in the fact that why would anybody want to go near the nuclear PR disaster that is HAAS at the moment for at least the next season?
Well, if they can't find a drive somewhere else on the grid, then if HAAS is the only option, then they have to go there if they want to stay in F1.
I think it will come down to a decision from HAAS. Perhaps I'm very wrong, but I think if they no longer have a title sponsor at the end of the season, then they will look to take on someone with a budget, and we all know what that means. So, yeah, 2 Russian drivers in HAAS next year.
You say that, but the F1 grid this year is not too bad actually in terms of pay drivers. The quality is probably the best it's been with so many young drivers, young superstars, young future stars in Formula 1 such as George Russell, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen. There are plenty of drivers, even Esteban Ocon if he does come back. So F1 should be in a good place.
And I'd just like to... I picked up on what you just said there. You did a little nuanced bit of language suggesting that pay drivers are not good drivers, and also at the same time suggesting that non-pay drivers are good drivers, better than pay drivers. Not always the case. I know you didn't say it, but it was a little suggestion. It was hidden in your comment. I picked up on it.
So name a pay driver then, and I'll say if he's good enough for F1 or not.
Sergio Perez.
Yeah, he's definitely good enough.
Lance Stroll.
He matched Ocon last year, and he got a podium at Baku.
Perez, I believe, is the quintessential example of a pay driver who did well. But
every driver brings a budget, minus Vettel and Hamilton. Every single driver brings something, a sponsor, some sort of thing to a team. So to call to and I know you didn't say this, Nigel, but others people do. I think we're all sort of guilty in a wider sense of almost writing people off just because they bring more of a budget to a team than other people.
No, not necessarily, because I think Sergei Sorokin last year, people were saying he's a pay driver, but I thought he actually didn't do a bad job. And if he stayed on the grid, I definitely wouldn't mind that. And I know a lot of people don't like Sergei Sorokin because he is a pay driver and he is rushing with all this money. So, yeah, that's one example.
Okay.
Sorokin, apparently he developed the car more than Stroll because he basically had the technical know-how to develop that car, while Stroll just did not, basically. So while, yes, he was a pay driver, he was far more useful to the team in developing any sort of technical know-how his teammate was. I had a quick look, by the way, for Rich Energy sponsors. All right, Lester, Toby Sowry is still listed on at least the Rich Energy website as one of their assets.
Oh, wow, breaking news. Motorsport journalist, correct.
I know. Well done. There's a load of other people listed on here. The other racing driver is maybe one of our fans would know this one, Jim Walker. Apparently races in the Northwest 200. But no, it's interesting to see, as you say, about the Rich Energy deals, let's say. But to be honest, you look at the way their PR year is done. We all call it a PR disaster. I don't know if anyone looked in depth at how certain American companies treat their Twitter accounts. I'm talking. I know the Wendy's, the fast food.
Do what tastes right. Sorry, that's one of their slogans.
Okay. They started it with the young hip. I feel awful saying that, but the sort of the new age young person approach to doing Twitter, and not just the corporate style. But a load of other American companies have sort of followed that suit recently. And the way HAAS comment about slagging off their opponents and small jabs, and it's not that dissimilar if you think about it. Maybe I really think it's just a sort of a slightly jaded young British person trying to emulate what these American companies are doing and trying to go off that line of marketing, basically. And over here in Britain, we're looking at it like, what on earth are you doing, you absolute mad people? But I'd be interested to see what their American stock is like. Perhaps that's something I probably just looked up, but what is the rich energy stock in the US doing? Because if that's going well, I wouldn't be surprised if the money is actually rolling in, and this is actually proving to be a strategy.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, Nigel, that, I'd questioned it rather, not mentioned it, but I, for one, have never seen, and I will check just to follow up on this, and if I am right, then I'll make more of a big point about it. If I'm not, I'll shut up and never talk about it again. But I've never, in all my casual, curious browses amongst the drinks aisles of various supermarkets and in convenience stores as well, I've never actually seen a can of Rich Energy in an actual real shop. Yes, people can buy it online for £1,000 or whatever it is, not that amount, but something ludicrous like that. But it doesn't seem to be a sustainable business.
Yeah, well, at least not in Britain anyway. Like Connor says, they are getting noticed, definitely. Whether it's for the right reasons or the wrong reasons is another story, but yeah.
All marketing is marketing.
Potentially. I do know of a case that I won't go into too much details about, but this person caused a lot of controversy a couple of years ago, and lots of people were outraged, for example, and I know for a fact that the profile of this person and the company really rocketed up because everyone was at the time slagging it off, and then after a couple of years, people, because of all the fake outrage that we were saying earlier, forgot what they were outraged about, and they just remembered the brand and the name. So the next time that they heard it, they thought, oh yeah, I've heard of that, I can't remember why, what for, I'll buy it. And I know psychological stuff like that is effective and does work. Just saying. Anyway,
that's the racing.
Yeah. Hello to everyone tuned in online as well. I know James Williams still tuned in and having his two penneth. And you're welcome to always disagree with what myself or Connor has to say, or even Nigel, if you dare. So,
you can't disagree with Nigel. That's just against the rules.
We might be launching a brand new show later in the season where the point of the show is to literally have a disagreement, mostly with Nigel, which is
Nigel versus World.
Which sounds pretty okay, apart from the fact that Nigel's wrong on almost every single occasion, when he's talking to me anyway. Hello, Blake Gibbons. He says HAAS may be better off getting multiple sponsors rather than one or two big sponsors. Maybe. That's not been the case for people like Williams. I think they've only got the one big. Anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on the negatives. Yeah, James has been back on as well and says that Sirotkin somehow still is a reserve driver for both McLaren and Renault, he says. I've not confirmed that, that's what James says. And adding to your point as well, Connor, about the, he says, not just the companies, but their leader as well, in reference to whatever it was you were saying. I was zoned out of it. But anyway, let us know, because that is the end of our supposed F1 talk for this week, I suppose, unless anyone's got any really important points that they need to jab in and, say.
Nothing really important.
Cheers for that, Nigel.
No, I'm looking forward to the next round.
Yes, just remind us where that is again. F1 is so Germany. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah, it's so fast paced. It's like, I don't know. I'm getting older now, so everything's going like really quick. I'm getting to that point in like life where he's like, oh, what was that? Oh, I missed that again. Oh, what was that again? Oh God, I keep missing all these things. But anyway, whatever. So yeah, Germany. But I did have time at the weekend to sit down and watch a rare event, Formula E, the last round in the 2018-19 calendar at New York City E-Prix, hashtag NYC E-Prix, and I think next season, i.e. next year, the final round, I can't remember off the top of my head if the calendar has been confirmed, but will it be London confirmed as the final round again? I think it will be.
Yes. Yeah.
The EXL Arena, I think.
Yeah, the drive-through. Sponsored by probably someone who operates a drive-through. That would be my obvious marketing conclusion from that. But yeah, Formula E finished yesterday, and Motorsport Radio were extremely proud to have official live radio coverage of the ABB FIA Formula E Championship rounds from New York City. And wow, Connor, it was very entertaining. More so than Formula One.
Well, we'll see, shall we? We'll see what the comments say. But yeah, no, as you said, the first race was all twists and turns. Verne only needed a couple points to basically secure his title, and he didn't do that. Finished down in 15th after two crashes, basically one in the first couple laps in which he broke front wing after Jose Maria Lopez, and the other one towards the end of the race when he collided with Massa going into the chicane, basically spinning around Massa and destroying everyone's race behind. But yes, it was a disaster for Verne on the first day, but he recovered. Second day, qualifying still wasn't that good outside the top 10, but remained out of trouble and eventually crossed the line 7th to comfortably take his championship. It will be a weekend of if anyone could catch him, and as it proved, the most likely people who could have caught him all didn't perform, basically. And the only contender who did perform was Buemi, who managed to leap himself from 8th in the order to 2nd by the end of the weekend. So that's an incredible achievement from the Swiss driver. To say that, though, if you told me at the start of the season that the top 3 in the championship would be Verne, Buemi and Di Grassi, I probably would have been, okay, just another normal regular season then. But honestly, the journey these 3 have taken to get there is extraordinary, and you've got to remember neither of them had a podium after the first 3 races. Didn't Buemi win his
first race of the season? Was it like dead late on or something like that? Was it?
It was this weekend, actually. His first race, he won the opening race from pole position, and that was his first. That was his first win of the whole campaign. His first win since 2017, I believe. It didn't even win last year as well. So it's a great return. Yeah, exactly. It's a great return to form for Buemi, who's really been out of it, and saves Nissan's season, who had looked like they were in for a disaster. But 4 podiums in the last 4 races for Buemi shoots him up from what was about 11th or 12th in the championship, as I said, up to 2nd overall. Di Grassi collided with Evans in the last lap of the last corner of the final race. Evans and Di Grassi made the only championship contenders left for Verne right at the end. And both of them were taken out of contention. Evans, as a result, finishes 5th in the championship behind Fry to won that final race. So yeah, it was a frantic final weekend, but ultimately Verne came out even despite his under par performance.
Nigel?
Yeah, what a season. This season has been fun. It's so unpredictable, so exciting. I'm having no idea who would win each race as we look forward to each weekend. 8 different winners from 8 different teams in the first 8 races. 9 different winners altogether by the end of the season, thanks to Buemi. It's just been an amazing season. And I was worried before the season, because of the new cars, new regulations, that one team would dominate, especially after Saudi Arabia in the first round, BMW and Tajid looked like they were going to possibly dominate the season, but they didn't, and it was just been chaotic, bad season. We'll definitely look back at this year in 20 years, 30 years time and remember what a great season it has been.
It is definitely one of the best. A lot of the comments coming out of the weekend was that it might have been the best season overall in its short 5-year history.
But I suppose it's how you want. I could argue the championship fight at the end was probably the most null of all of the 5 seasons, as it was the most foregone conclusion, which is ironic considering how entertaining the rest of the season was. By the time we reached the end, Verne was the only one with any realistic chance of claiming the title. So I could argue in that sense, the end was nulled. But as you say, the amount of winners we had in the middle was so random and sporadic that by the time Verne won his 3rd race in Bern, I was almost sort of writing off. Oh, here we go, he's dominating now, this is it, season's over. Because I didn't think anyone could win the last 2 races, because the season had been so up and down and sporadic that I didn't think one driver could win 2 races in a row. So to win 2 out of 3, I thought was just the nail for Verne's competitors. And I think that says a lot. If Hamilton did a first, a third, and a first, we would have said, oh, he's a bit off par in one of those races. But in Formula E, that's effectively complete domination. And that's the other point, is Verne's continued success after win. You look at how the results of many drivers after they did pick up that one win, as you say. Da Costa retired from the following 2 races. Bird never finished the rest of the season. Neither did D'Ambrosio. Or Mortara didn't even score a point after his one and only win. So it's Evans finished on the podium twice after his win, but not for 3 races after it. So it was a case of winning a race seemed to be a bit of a death nail for half the grid, and even France came susceptible to that. In fact, the only 3 drivers who managed to score a podium the race after their victory was the top 3 in the championship, Verne, Buemi and De Grassi, and I think that just proves their class over the opposition. I know we brought in different weight, I believe, for this year, which was always going to spice up the grid, and obviously the reverse qualifying was also a massive disadvantage to anyone at the top of the championship. But it was interesting to see which drivers remained consistent throughout, and I'm very pleased this season with drivers like Evans and Da Costa, who not only remained in the hunt throughout the whole season, but managed to also keep consistently bagging the points, which is something some of the other drivers, even the more experienced drivers like Bird, Sims and Mortara, didn't do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a huge part of Formula E, just being consistent, knowing that if you are at the front at the top of the championship, you will be starting near the back due to the qualifying. But then you need to have the racecraft and the skills to come through the field, make overtakes, not do anything stupid by getting a penalty for spinning someone round or not getting hit. So then the racecraft, which is what we all like to see. We was talking about good racing before with Formula 1. That's something you really need to stay out of trouble. And Jean-Eric Verne has probably been the best driver to do that throughout the season, so he thoroughly deserves the championship.
Connor?
Indeed, the consistency was a big thing, as you say. Very few drivers finished every race, let alone scored points in every race. No one scored points in every race. In fact, a small actually be noted to Vettel, who despite finishing 12th in the championship, only actually finished a race, didn't score a point in one of them, which is the final race of the year. He was either scoring points or retiring. But I think that, and for considering he finished down in 12th, I think that really does show the that really does show the randomness that the field had. Very few points separated the basically second all the way down to ninth, I believe. There's only about 30 points in it, I believe. He says trying to do quick maths in his head.
No idea.
So exactly. So we talk about consistency, and Nigel is right, but the consistent drivers with Felix Da Costa and Verline were actually didn't perform at all. The drivers that did win the championship, Vern didn't score points for 5 of the races this season. But when he did score points, it was often on the podium. So I don't know. You talk about consistency. It looks like what's winning the championship is just doing well, as opposed to scoring points every weekend.
Interesting.
Just doing well. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, boom or bust, I think, would be the better way to put it. Boom or bust drivers did a lot better than consistently every week drivers.
Okay.
Generally.
I have a question that I'd like to put to both of you in just a moment, which is, well, let's start with Nigel. Of the 2018-19 season, who in the ABB FIA Formula E Championship this year, Nigel, was the driver of the season? Not necessarily the guy who won and scored the most points, but for you, and it's something that I always criticise other people for doing, is choosing like the driver of the season, not necessarily who didn't win the championship, because that would be the obvious choice. But if you've got anyone different other than Jev, who is it and why?
Yeah, for me it's Mitch Evans in Jaguar, because Jaguar hasn't been the best team this year. Yeah, he put himself into championship contention very well later in the latter stages of the season. He won a race in Rome, and for me that was the race of the season where he beat Andre Lotterer of the Techeetah team, and it was a great race, great racecraft from him. And as the season's gone on, he's just got better and better. And as I said before, the Jaguar team is not the strongest team like Techeetah or Audi, and he's done really well to even give himself a chance of winning the title. And he's always been very fast, a very good driver in his when he was younger, when he was doing GP2 as it was called then. And he's really making a mark on Formula E, and I think he's got a good chance within the next few years of putting himself in championship contention again.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember when he did really well, and I think he won GP3 when that was a thing as well. I think he came second just behind, was it Davide Valsecchi? I can't remember. Years ago anyway.
I know he did win it.
Oh, he did win it. Okay, yeah, there you go. But yeah, highly rated, still young driver, old Stitch Evans. Good shout. Connor, same question to you. Who of the 2018-19 ABB FIA Formula E Championship has been your driver of the season?
I would have liked to have said Nigel's selection, so I won't.
Well, you can if you want. You can agree with him.
No, no, I will agree with him massively and say I'll back the points up. But I suppose the other driver that's impressed me loads this season is Da Costa, coming back into contention.
Damn it, I was going to say
he's... Sorry.
He made you sneeze.
Indeed, he did. Da Costa's been sort of off pace in Formula E the last couple of seasons, and for a driver who spectacularally won that race in Argentina, all those back in the first year by only leading the final lap, it's been an interesting development for him, making the switch over now to BMW power. He was obviously he's been with Andretti for 2 seasons prior to this, but they've been terrible seasons. They've barely managed to score points, as he hasn't had a podium since that one random win, as I mentioned. And to come into the start of the year when BMW looked like the team to beat at testing, I don't want to say he didn't make a mistake, because he overshot pole position on the first race of the year and had to reverse himself back into the grid. But he was almost faultless in that opening race at Adria to dominate. And while mistakes did cost him a result at Marrakesh and Santiago. He fought back for Mexico, only losing out due to contact with his teammate, famously. If it hadn't been for that contact in that contact in Marrakesh, and it actually finished Santiago in a reasonable position, that start of the season BMW had was spectacular, and it would have been great to see Da Costa really fight for the championship in the closing stages, especially considering how Sims performed on that final race in New York, proving BMW still had the speed to compete at the front. But when it came to consistency, Da Costa was a rare, consistent driver towards the front of the field in a barrage of up and down place setters. Like Verline, he only finished one race outside of the points. Everything else he was finishing in the points or or retiring. So it really was a case that Da Costa was there to pick up the spoils when everyone else wasn't. And even in the lower races where people didn't consider him a standout performer, like in Sanya in China, when Verne dominated that race, we forget that Da Costa did work his way through to third in that race, and it was actually on the podium and led the championship after the round.
I forgot.
Yeah, he's one of only 3 drivers, I believe, to have led the championship twice this season. And
you with all stats, eh? Bloody hell, I'm struggling to even remember what happened yesterday in the race. But...
Yeah, indeed. So for someone to have done that in a car that was untested at the start of the season, for a brand new power unit that was obviously new to Formula E this season, he's done incredibly well, and it's certainly his best season to date. BMW have been wise to sign him on for another year, and if they can sort out a few niggling issues, I definitely think
like not winning.
Yes, like not winning. Then BMW, I think, will be a force to be reckoned with next season, and could be a legitimate challenger to the Audi and DS breakaway that we seem to be getting.
Interesting. And for the record, I did think of it before Connor said it, even though you don't believe me now. I would have also said Antonio Felix Da Costa. I was going to sneeze then. But yeah, as one of my
obviously
as my driver of the year, not to take anything away from Jean-Eric Verne or any of the other great drivers who have put on spectacular performances in E-Prix and won races and challenged for the title. I would suggest, if it wasn't for his mid-season collapse in form, maybe Sam Bird might have been in contention for my driver of the year, but he has kind of struggled. But anyway, focus on the positives, Forbes. But yeah, the ABB, for me anyway, the ABB FIA Formula E Championships driver of the year, for me, I'll match what Connor says. Antonio Felix Da Costa. We should get him on the show, by the way. And incidentally, just reminded myself that Alexander Sims, an interview with him you can catch out still on our website right now, motorsport.radio. We did last month? A while ago, I think it was. We did it a good few weeks ago. And it's an interesting look into his mindset as he challenges Formula E and tries to juggle that championship with his ongoing sports car and GT commitments, with being still a young factory driver. And check that out. Motorsport.radio. It should still be on the front page, or just search for it. Alexander Sims. Great interview. Great guy as well. So yeah, final thoughts about the Formula E, ABB FIA Formula E Championship season 2018-19. Nigel, I think I already asked it earlier, but classic season maybe? Yes, definitely one of the best, probably.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's been the best season so far of the 5. Just hope for more in season 6, really, because to have that many different winners, to have the amount of racing, good hard racing we've had, it's just been incredible. And every single race has seen a battle for the lead, like a proper, whether it's just an overtake or proper racing. And that says something really about how close the competition is and how good the racing is in Formula E.
It does say something like that, yes, Nigel. And maybe, Connor, it says that the size of the tracks in particular are just about right, or are they? What are your thoughts? I know it's a bit of a random question considering what.
I know what you mean, because it's all city tracks. Obviously, there are limits to the city for obvious reasons. So you can't make certain streets wider. I get that, but when IndyCar or even Formula One organises its street circuits, it will organise it on appropriate streets, so highways and big service roads that are 3-4 lanes wide and have the appropriate space for those machinery. Formula E doesn't appear to have that.
They wouldn't be stuck in some like fish market car park or something on the docks or wherever it was. Is what? Yeah.
Yeah, Formula E take an entirely different approach, which is they will find a bit of square land and they will make a racetrack out of it. As you say, with the dock situation, or as we had with New York, we've also had with the Hong Kong E-Prix was similar to that. And I don't know if this is the best way to go about it. I realise you can't shut down entire cities. New York especially, I don't think you could have a race around Times Square or even in any of the major routes around Manhattan. But I don't know, potentially shutting off the park for a short amount of time, that might be a lot better. And they also have wider roads in there. Formula E did it with London a couple of years back with Battersea Park. Again, that was well contained within a park, but it was far away from any of the major service hubs, and it was also very narrow streets. Being next to the XL Centre next year, I think will do a lot better for them, because it's going to be in a lot more accessible location for the fans, so they can show up.
There won't be too many residents whinging, whining, pulling their face.
It won't be next to residents. Yeah, it won't be next to residents either, as you say. And obviously, we've got that uniqueness of being a half indoors track. That will be fun.
I'd love McDonald's to sponsor that, just so they can say it's a drive-through.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the Formula E cars sound inside, and be interesting to see
like that.
It'll be interesting to see if the surface makes any difference, because I'll be interested to see what surface they put down, because I doubt they'd want to tarmac the inside of the XL. There has to be some sort of temporary concrete, but even so, that's going to be difficult to put down, I'd imagine, unless you just put it as a straight laminated floor or something ridiculous. And
maybe it'd be like
that would be.
And anyone who's done like indoor karting on a surface that clearly hasn't been treated, it's still like the warehouse floor, which is dead slippy, and you've got like karting tyres which are like a year old and been like thrashed to death on them. Maybe, I'm just imagining in my mind, last time I went on an indoor karting place with terrible tyres and stuff, I think it was at the Autosport International show a couple of years ago. Don't want to slag them off because they do great work, but I'd imagine it was like that. The car was basically uncontrollable because these things are like super slippy, especially if it's like a wet race. Then it'll be like a wet-dry race because half the track is like indoors. That'll be interesting.
It will be, as you say. Formula E don't have wet tyres, though, I believe, or at least not.
No, but
partially.
like, if it's raining, though, half the circuit will be wet, and then half the circuit will be bone dry. And they'll be going into that dry surface on wet tyres.
Yeah, make it even more exciting than it already is.
Exactly. And I wonder what lighting they'd have as well, because like I'd be tempted to, like, if I was the event person doing the XL thing, maybe they should put me in charge. I'd put like loads of like disco lighting and stuff, and I'd get like laser beams everywhere, and I'd go like way over the top, proper, almost like what they already do anyway. But it's not over the top; it's just different in an entertaining way. But that's kind of what I'd do. I don't think it would just be like a stale, static lighting situation. I do think we'd have like things and loads of little LEDs. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
I'm planning the circuit out in my head, but sorry, go
Go on, Connor.
The circuit, you should say, will be interesting because they've done exactly what I'm frustrated they keep doing, which is adding loads of little corners and chicanes into every square bit of tarmac possibly ever.
It sounds like you've already got a design in your head, or you've already pre-designed something.
I'm sure I can design a Formula E track for you if you desire, Lester. But
here's one I made earlier. Oh, that's convenient, Connor. How did you do that?
Yeah, no, let's not do that. But it's I realise they do have to have the regen, and I understand that. So some chicanes aren't too bad, but you look at that opening section with the Royal Dock circuits, and it's all very technical. It's all very itty-bitty, and it comes back to the Formula 1 problem, which is with modern single-seaters, you can't have these tight, slow corners, especially how Formula E do them with their curbs right up to the byline with their standard style. It means you can't run over the inside of the corner at all. So impossible. Overtaking only happens at the end of long straights and often in the very wide sections. If we look back at the New York race, where did the overtakes happen? At the end of both of the long straights. And same thing happens with Formula 1. Look at where the overtakes happen there. It's at Stowe last weekend with Silverstone Village, where it's nice and wide into a slow braking zone. And that's the point. Braking zones after a long straight are where the overtakes happen. There'll be a lot of complaints next year when Vietnam comes around on the F1 calendar, because if you look at the track,
oh yeah, I forgot.
When you look at the track design for that, and it is basically they've gone right down one side of a highway, gone around a roundabout, and come up the other side of the highway, and then wiggled their way out into an industrial estate just to finish it up with the start line. And it looks like the oddest track on the calendar. It looks completely unconventional, but I'll tell you what, Vietnam will probably make the best racing of the season because it is just straights, and that's how this modern racing works with aero and with the aerodynamics of the car. You need these long straights for the slipstreaming, the tight technical corners and the fast corners, because that's the other thing with fast corners that circuits try to introduce. They never work. They never help overtaking. It's only there to challenge.
They never work all these left-right turns.
Honestly, though, you look at Maggots Beckett. It's one of a few examples of moderately successful twisty sections. Yet you look at how Austin, how they try to
rip it off.
Yeah, they try to copy the design. How many overtakes do you see into there? None, because the cars just go single file for a quarter of a mile until they eventually reach the end of the left right forever, and they get up to the big hairpin where they actually do the overtakes. And yeah, I'm aware you want to keep some traditional style with the circuits, but if Formula E are going to design new circuits, they've got to make the use of the fact that street circuits involve a lot of straight lines, and those straight lines are really useful for great racing, basically.
Yeah, go on.
There's been enough great racing this year. Anyway, you don't need to change. The only two circuits I would change is probably Hong Kong and Paris, which are a little bit too tight. But the rest of the circuits have produced great racing, and with the Formula E cars, of course, you can follow nose to tail. You can even bump people a little bit. So then, yeah, I don't really think much needs to change, because you don't want them to be too wide, or else that's...
Or else what?
Well, because that it makes the overtaking easier. The whole point of one of the reasons I like Formula E is because you don't fly past it. You don't have to get the job done on the brakes. You don't get the job done well before the corner. And if you do overdo it, you don't have the width on the outside, so you don't get punished.
Yeah, but as you say, you've still got to have the opportunity to overtake. You look at Paris. It's very rare that anyone actually overtook legitimately on that. As a result, the rain made it so that everyone crashed off anyway, and that was a completely different story. But you don't overtake on the narrow sections. It's even if you look back at the two London races we had at Battersea, there wasn't really a lot of overtaking in that. It was just a load of people crashing off all the time.
Yeah, I know. But it's not just about overtaking, it's about racing, if you can follow nose to tail, then it doesn't matter if you don't overtake or not. And follow racing nose to tail, I mean, everyone remembers Schumacher and Alonso at Imola 2005 and how great it was. There was no overtake.
It wasn't.
Yeah, but you've still got to have the opportunity to overtake. I can understand, as you say, banging racing, and I get that. That's fine. But there's no point just having a train of cars for 30 laps like Monaco, but a lot tighter.
I think maybe Nigel to go on, Nigel.
We haven't seen that in Formula E this year.
Well, I could argue have to an extent, with Paris and Hong Kong, as you say. Hong Kong most notably had the two leaders basically crash into each other just because they couldn't overtake. Monaco didn't have any. Monaco, it's a perfect example, didn't have any overtakes at all.
Whoa. Monaco did have some overtakes into the first corner.
Yeah, some overtakes into the one corner that's designed for overtakes for the F1 Cup.
Robin Franz overtook into Tabac.
Yeah.
When? Where?
Where? Watch the race again and you'll see Robin Franz make a move into Tabac down the inside.
Okay. But, yeah. I'll admit you can go too far on the opposite side. Some of the tracks are unnecessarily wide, see Berlin. But even with Berlin, it's not as if these wide tracks inhibited the thing. So it was easy to overtake. I'd hardly say Berlin was a bad race because it had really wide overtaking areas.
So you think Formula should make the tracks wider or go to tracks with a wider layout?
Exactly. And back to my point.
I don't agree.
We should all go to wider tracks.
I don't agree.
Okay.
Anyway, we will have to leave it there because we've come to the end of the show, unfortunately. But yes, that debate will rumble on in our team chat off air. Unless maybe you'd like to add your comments as well, because we do read out all the comments, whether anyone's listening or not, but we read them. Your comments are always welcome. And thank you very much for tuning in, whether it's only just been for these few seconds or it's been for the whole show and you've had nothing else better to do. Thank you anyway. It's greatly appreciated. We will be back next Monday live at 8 for another Monday Motorsport, and we'll try and drag a couple of VIPs on so we can interrogate them and ask them about circuit design. Is it better to have a NASCAR style 10 wide, as some people suggest, or is it better to promote better overtaking in the narrow? Anyway, that's for another debate.
Ooh,
I do have
on ovals.
No. Anyway, I strongly suspect that Connor Jackson has a stack of pre-drawn circuit designs which could be better laid out. I know some people do. That's why I mention it. I'm not calling you out, don't worry. But thank you anyway for tuning in to another Monday Motorsport. Nigel, thank you very much for coming on, and we'll sort you out with a proper microphone. Don't worry. And Connor, thank you also for being part of tonight's show. We will sort you out with some proper internet over there in that there Norfolk place. Yes, we will be back next Monday. Thank you very much for tuning in, and that's it. That is it for one show. I will say goodbye and good night.
Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hi, it's Seb Ogier.
This is Manuel Maldonado.
Hi, I'm Ash Sutton.
Hi, I'm Michael O'Brien, and this is Motorsport Radio.